Well, hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Legacy Farm, the podcast. I'm your host, Jace Young, and today's topic of discussion is this: what happens when you finally wake up? So guys, today's topic is more based on just kind of what I did for my daily work this morning, but really just I wanted to share this and talk about this because I feel so many people in this world are asleep right now. And you can be a business owner, by the way, and still be completely asleep. Now, I'll kind of use my story as an intro into this topic here, but ultimately through this, I want you to really analyze your story and whether or not right now you're making actions based on the fact that you are awake, or are you continuing to just be a wandering generality, moving on day by day in life, questioning why you're doing what you're doing and where you're doing it at, right? So kind of a mouthful there, but it's just the truth, right? So when I was back in the banking industry and things like that, right, going through college and everything like that, we're sold this dream, right? We're sold that if you get a college degree, you'll go make all this money, you'll then be successful and you will be happy and fulfilled and go on and retire at 65 and then live out the rest of your years. I realized very quickly once I got into the banking industry that was not the case. I was miserable in that place within about the first 2 weeks, but I survived, for 5 or 6 years there. But ultimately though, I knew deep down that I wasn't going to be there long term because it was such a bare road to be traveling down. Like there was not going to be any excitement there. And again, too, guys, I'm not trash talking anybody else that's choosing that path or anything like that. If that's works for you, great, that's for you. I'm talking about my story here and just kind of my characteristics and why I chose to leave that. But ultimately, as I got into the bank though, I realized that everything that we had been sold or taught, conditioned, and trained to believe as truth ultimately was the exact opposite, right? It really wasn't going to serve me. It wasn't going to get me where I wanted to go being inside that banking industry. And I shared that story with you because that was really the first time in my life that I truly feel like I started to wake up, right? And the thing is, I think about the system that we operate in with traditional school and education and things like that, right? The traditional school and education system is training people to be workers, right? To basically be wandering generalities. You are like a robot. You go to work every day, you clock in 8 to 5, 9 to 5, you go home, you do the same shit day after day after day after day, and it never ends, right? And that is sold to be the dream. But when I was in the bank though, it's like I finally started to wake up, right? Whereas the majority of my life prior to that, I'd been asleep, right? Eyes are closed. I'm a wandering generality going day by day. And I finally opened up like one eyelid, right? And I started to see the world from a different perspective and started to see the lies for what they were. And now, one thing in the topic and what I was doing my reading on this morning referred to this as the second coming of life. And what that means is through the first part of your life, you're basically conditioned to believe all these things and, told that, again, this is truth and this is what you're supposed to want. And this is what you're supposed to desire, all this type of crap there. And the second coming is when you finally wake up and see the lies for what they were and start to notice the truth in your own life, right? And man, what an empowering moment, but also too, what a scary moment as well, because a lot of people, they spend their entire lives doing that. And ultimately, I know a lot of people that are in their 30s and 40s that typically, most of them just died, not realistically, but they died internally at the age of 22. And they're going to spend the rest of their life like that. But they like to tell themselves a story that even if they wake up and they're in their 30s or in their 40s, they still like to tell themselves that, oh, it's too late. Life is halfway over and things like that. Jumping into how this is relative to the modern day business owner. It is 100% possible if you went back to the family farm operation, right, and you're working on the farm operation, that you may still be asleep. And what do I mean by that? You may have went back and because you were told all these promises that you're going to be able to take over the farm, or you're going to get assets, you're going to get responsibility, all of this stuff here, right? But for a lot of people, and I've talked about this on other podcasts, that doesn't happen. Right. A lot of the customers that we've talked to over the years, they are in their 40s or 50s and they've spent 2 or 3 decades back at the family farm operation, choosing to set up their entire life there and ultimately don't have anything to show for it yet. And there's still this promise there. Right. And so the reason I bring that up is because how many of you right now are operating in your world, and you may be in your 30s and 40s, but you're still operating, believing the lies as truth, right? You know the bullshit that you're putting up with inside of your life. You know what people are doing to you around you. You know what people are lying and what people are in integrity. You know whether or not you are doing things that you're ultimately supposed to do and accepting things that you were ultimately supposed to accept, right? And that's what's really tough here, is because when we come to around to the second coming here, when you finally wake up, the things that God is requiring you to do after that, they are painful. And this is what we experience inside the legacy farmer all the time, because a lot of our customers, when they're coming in, they're starting their journey of the second coming. They are starting to open an eyelid and understand that, hey, we've been taught, trained, and conditioned that we should be running our business this way, or that we should be putting up with, family matters this way, or that we should just settle in. And this is what we've taught to be truth for years. And now all of a sudden they come into legacy farmer and we're shaking all of that up. The way that they've operated up until this moment is no longer the way that they're going to operate going forward into the future. And this is where the awakening or the beginning of the second coming starts to happen, right? And I heard this quote one time, and it says, every man lives 2 lives, but the second one starts when he realizes he only has one to live, right? And that's when we start to really just cut out all the BS, cut out all the lies, and we want to operate from a place of truth. But there's so many people, again, that are halfway through their life that are still putting up with the lies that they can even see. They can see them now. You're in your 30s and 40s or 50s, and you can see the lies right now, but you're still putting up with them because you think that's what you're supposed to do. I'm here to tell you that you're not. If the second coming has come into your life and you're starting to wake up a little bit, you need to understand the blessings that God has for you once you take the initial actions. And by initial actions, what I mean is making drastic changes on your farm operation that you're now going to, make that now that you have access to information or the finances or whatever that we help people do in Legacy Farmer. Or you start to have a crucial conversation with your parents around what they promised to give you when you move back to the family farm operation, but they're no longer, they're just kicking that can down the road. This is that second coming, is where you start to take action and start to really do the hard things that not a lot of people are willing to do. And like I said, you don't even understand the life that God has in store for you until you start to take those actions. But once you have, it's like, that's your proving ground to him. Right? To where now he said, okay, Jace is worthy of this because he did the hard things that, others are not willing to do. And so now I'm going to open up these doors, open up these opportunities. Now, I'm not saying the whole journey after that is just all roses. It's definitely not. But anything worthwhile, God is not going to make it easy to acquire, right? It's not going to make it easy to achieve here. And that's what makes it worth it in the end. But I share all this with you because right now there's a lot of people that are awake that are not taking actions they need to take. And this goes in ebbs and flows, right? You have highs and lows in doing this. From my experience, I've had times where I was drastically awake, and guess what? I drifted back off to where I was like a little bit asleep again, right? Because everything, new in your life becomes normal. It always does. Everything new in your life will always become normal. And it requires us to constantly be challenging ourselves or evolving or learning or growing or whatever that may be there to make sure that we're not sinking back into normal. Because when we sink back into normal, or when what was once new becomes normal for us now, we start to close our eyes again, right? We start to go back to sleep. We start to become a wandering generality. And so that's why you ultimately have to keep your feet in the fire there a little bit and continue to push yourself, continue to move forward, because it's so easy to fall back asleep and start putting up with lies and bullshit in your life again that ultimately are not going to get you where you want to go. And I can guarantee, if you're listening to this podcast right now, you can either one, rack yourself up as doing this, right? Raise your own hand. Or two, I guarantee several people around you that you saw them alive at one point, that you look at them now and it's like they're dead, right? They're here physically, but they are dead internally. They are nothing but a wandering generality going on day by day, not actually moving anywhere or accomplishing anything that they want in their life. And man, I do not want to live that life. I would rather live a life of constant pain and struggle and challenge and adversity than, man, putting me in a corner, give me, a place to live and food every day and a blanket. That sounds boring as can be to me, right? And that's just what's crazy and kind of confusing about this life sometimes. So at the end of the day, I hope this podcast, spoke some truth to you. More importantly than that, I hope you take action because of it, right? Because guys, that's why I do these podcasts. I want them to impact you. I want you to start taking different actions in your life because of it. And also too, by me speaking about this to you, I'm also speaking to myself on this as well. And even doing this podcast, for me to see those things that I'm putting up with in my life and ultimately start making changes that I'm pushing all of you to make as well. So it's a win-win for me in this scenario. So my friends, hope you found value in this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.